You can spend thousands of dollars on high-end winter camping gear, but what if you didn't have to? What if you could go winter camping with the summer gear that you already have? I'm headed out on a winter trip to see if my summer backpacking gear, with a few inexpensive additions, can cut it for winter camping. Footwear is one of the easier summer items to use in the wintertime. If you have a pair of waterproof boots and it's not super cold out, then all you probably need to do is add a second pair of socks and you'll be all set. If your footwear isn't waterproof, then try putting a pair of waterproof socks on, or you could even use bread bags to act as a waterproof barrier. Right now I'm using my summer hiking boots and I just have a pair of Injinji liner socks on with a pair of wool socks over top of that, and my feet are toasty warm. So I just ran into some people that I actually met at a campsite while I was on the Great Divide Trail. We started talking gear and clothing, and I was talking about the clothing that I'm wearing right now. It's really easy to take your summer hiking clothing and use it in the wintertime. All you have to do is layer. You've probably heard that before. It's important to layer in the wintertime, and that's not a lie. You could take your favorite summer hiking pants, throw a pair of long johns underneath that, have a long sleeve base layer, and then throw a fleece jacket over top of that, and you're gonna stay nice and toasty. If it's a little bit colder, you can grab a wind jacket like I'm wearing right now and just throw that over top just to lock in a little bit more heat. While you're hiking, the key is to be warm, but not too warm. There's the old saying, be bold, start cold. And that's because moisture and temperature management is really important while you're out in winter conditions, especially when you're at camp, for everything from cooking to your sleep system. But we're gonna keep hiking, hitting the trail, and we'll talk about all that stuff once we get to camp. Before we talk about the piece of winter gear that I get asked about the most, I wanna thank Garage Door and Gear for sponsoring today's trip. Garage Door and Gear is my go-to store for backpacking gear, and they recently released a deal of the week page. So I go on that website all the time checking for cool, new, awesome gear. But what the deal of the week page allows you to do is go on the website every Friday when they release new items and maybe pick up a deal on a piece of gear that you've been looking to grab. I'll put a link in the video description to the deal of the week page so you guys can go check it out. Something I get asked all the time is if you can use a 3-season tent in the winter time. And I've used a ton of different 3-season tents during winter conditions, including this one. This one behind me is a semi-freestanding tent, so it's definitely not made for winter conditions. And I've never had any problems unless I'm dealing with extreme snow load. So if you're checking the weather and you see that it's gonna dump a foot of snow overnight, then you may wanna bring a winter-specific tent and leave the 3-season tent at home. But for most people, in most conditions, a 3-season tent is gonna be just fine during winter camping. When I started winter camping years ago, I started by just taking my summer gear out on winter trips. And one of the big important things is your sleep system and your camp clothing, because it gets cold at wintertime, especially at night, and you wanna make sure that you're warm while you're around camp and when you're sleeping. Your sleep system is one of the tougher systems for winter camping to use your summer gear. You have to be managing colder temperatures, colder ground, and increased issues with condensation. Condensation, moisture management are much bigger issues in the wintertime because it's a lot harder to dry your gear out if it does get damp or wet. I'm gonna use my sleep system tonight, and then tomorrow morning I'll let you guys know how it went and then give you 2 strategies that I'm using tonight in order to hopefully stay warm while using my summer sleep system. Just like with your hiking clothing, it's all about layers with your camp clothing as well. You just keep adding layers until you have enough that you're gonna be warm enough while you're around camp. For me, some key pieces are having long johns and then a long sleeve base layer, as well as fleece pants and then a fleece sweater on top as well. And then a couple down layers are gonna really allow you to use that setup in really cold conditions. There's some really affordable down pants and down jackets out there. I'll have links in the video description for all the gear that I brought out on this trip. Cooking is a little bit harder in the wintertime as well. Most canisters that you'd get for a canister stove have a mix of 80 to 20 of isobutane to propane. Isobutane has a boiling temperature of -12, and then propane has a boiling temperature of -42. At any temperatures below those boiling temperatures, the fuel inside the canister is going to be liquid instead of gas. And that means you're going to have troubles using upright canister stoves in any temperatures below freezing. If you have a cheaper canister that's only isobutane or N-butane, you're going to have even more troubles at cold temperatures. So make sure you have a fuel canister that has at least 20% propane in it. Stoves like this one that have a regulator inside of them, so that's something that doesn't get advertised very often, are gonna perform better at lower temperatures because they regulate the gas and how that gas is coming out of the canister and then through the burner of the stove. I've been able to use stoves without regulators to temperatures just below freezing, but when I use a stove with a regulator, I can get down to about -10 degrees Celsius or even colder sometimes. Obviously, there's a lot of other factors that are gonna come into play, like how much fuel you have in your canister, what elevation you're at, as well as how warm the canister is when you're starting to use it. So that's a little bit of a tip for winter camping. Keep your canister warm before you use it. I like to just keep it inside of my jacket, and then I take it out right before I'm about to use it for cooking, and then attach it to my stove and light it up. And if you don't want to deal with canisters and stoves, you can always just throw your pot into a fire and get it going that way if you're allowed to have fires where you are. I'm gonna enjoy my Bushka's Kitchen dinner here, this sunset. We'll see you guys in the morning. Good morning. I slept pretty good last night. The wind was crazy. Gusts were getting over 20 kilometers an hour and temperatures got down below freezing, but I was nice and toasty. And I actually have 3 strategies that I want to share with you, not just 2. The first one has to do with your ground insulation. I recommend bringing a foam pad to supplement your summer sleeping pad. So right now I have here just a folding foam pad that I slide underneath my sleeping pad. You can put it on top as well. It'll be a little bit more effective, but I find for comfort, I like to have it underneath. For wintertime, I recommend having a stacked R value of at least 5. If you're going down into much colder temperatures, then try and get that above 6. The second strategy that I use is to have a quilt or blanket that's synthetic that goes over top of my sleeping bag. The quilt does 2 things. First of all, it helps keep you warm by adding more insulation. And by using a synthetic quilt or blanket, if you're using a down sleeping bag or quilt as your kind of main piece of insulation, using a synthetic quilt or blanket allows you to move that moisture that's cooling off and condensing into a synthetic layer like this quilt. And the synthetic materials is going to handle that moisture a lot better, and it's going to dry faster. The third strategy has to do with layering, and this is really important for wintertime because wintertime can get dangerous. I just slept in my base layers, merino wool long johns, merino wool long sleeve shirt, and that's all I needed. I had my down jacket and my down pants sitting next to me in case it got colder than I expected. I always make sure that I'm bringing enough insulation in my sleep system, in my ground insulation and in my top insulation in order to stay warm at temperatures that I expect. But if needed, I can throw on these extra down layers and stay warm if temperatures get well below I thought they're going to. And I've had to use this strategy in the past, and it made a night that would have been really uncomfortable and potentially dangerous into a nice, comfortable sleep. Winter camping can be dangerous, so make sure you're testing out all these systems in your backyard or when you're car camping so that you're not getting out on a winter backpacking trip and having an unpleasant surprise. If you want to see my winter-specific gear, go check out that video right up there. It has everything from my winter-specific sleep system, tent, fire-making tools, as well as a really robust winter cook system.